My name is Diana Mitlin. I work at the University of Manchester and the International Institute for Environment and Development. The title of my lecture is Co-producing Inclusive Cities to ensure that no one is left behind. What does that actually mean in practice? I'm going to talk about the ways in which citizen groups use co-production to ensure that working with the state addresses their needs and not simply exposes them to being manipulated or drawn into relationships in which they are co-opted and lose their autonomy and lose their sense of direction. So I'm going to begin a little bit by defining co-production. It's important because we have to understand what's meant by co-production. Co-production is government, mainly local government, and citizens working together to produce the kinds of basic services they need. Co-production is the provision of public services, broadly defined, including regulation, through regular long-time relationships between state agencies and organised groups of citizens, where both make a substantial resource contribution. Now that's only one definition, actually by Joshi and Moore in a paper from 2004. I don't want to get caught up in the details, but what is involved is a collaboration. So I'm going to be looking at the ways in which citizens and state come together to produce the basic services that states are committed to providing and that citizens need to enjoy. Talking about water, sanitation, waste management, those kinds of things. And I'm going to be talking about a subset of citizen-led co-production. So we have different forms of co-production initiated by many different agencies. And in particular, I want to highlight three reasons for their engagement with, their motivation to be drawn into co-productive relationships. The first reason is so they can contest the negative identities that are often related to a lack of income and poverty. The second reason is to ensure that service delivery actually addresses the needs of the most deprived groups in their communities. And the third reason is to strengthen their own neighbourhood organisations, to build neighbourhood organisations that are able to represent the needs and the interests of disadvantaged groups. So that's the technical bit over and away. I wanted to start by giving the viewers a flavour for what it's like to live in an informal settlement. This is actually a picture from a settlement in Malawi, in Blantyre, and it's a series of it's actually sanitation. These are toilets. And one of the things that low-income people who live in informal settlements experience is people being prejudiced to them because they live like that. And it sounds incredible to many of you, but in my experience, working with low-income groups of citizens who are organised but who live in informal settlements, they often explain to me how they don't want to acknowledge where they live when they go for jobs. And the reason they don't want to is because people think that they are more likely to be criminal and they are less likely to be upright citizens. So one of the things I've had the benefit of doing is working very closely with a network of community groups called Shack Dwellers International. Shack Dwellers are working across Africa, Asia, a little bit in Latin America, to support groups that are living in settlements like this to define their own priorities and to realise those priorities. So this is the kind of thing that when citizens get engaged in working with local government around their own agendas can emerge. This is a settlement in South Africa, a place called Lanrug, and these are community initiated and built toilets. So in this case, the community groups have been strong enough to challenge the way that local government thought about them, to explain what they needed, to demonstrate that they've worked across the community, that these are genuine priorities, and then put in place these blocks which provide communal sanitation because people's shacks don't have that. And these are blocks that are not only built by the communities, financed in this case by local government, but they're also blocks in which the community is managing them and ensuring that there's a quality product for the residents of this settlement to enjoy. One of the things that really drives this process is that women experience some of the greatest shortcomings. It's not that I wanted to show the viewers how lazy men are. In fact, they were laughing a lot about this slide. These are male construction workers who are working alongside women to improve housing options outside of Kitwe in Zambia. So these are men who are working with women, but the point about this slide is really to emphasise that deprivation of services is gendered. Women have primary responsibility for managing the needs of children, for old people, of themselves, and also the men in their family. So not only is there a negative identity in general, but many women take to heart the fact that they cannot provide for their children and their parents in the way that they want to. So they suffer particularly not just from an absolute deprivation of services and very high levels of sickness and mortality, they also suffer because they do not believe they are being the people they want to be in providing development options for their children and the rest of their families. That was the first reason I argued why citizens get drawn into doing co-production, get drawn into working with the state. They want to challenge the way in which society is viewing them, and they want to demonstrate that they have the right priorities and they have the capacity and capability and will to move things forward. They are also very conscious that many government programs don't address the needs of the lowest income and most disadvantaged groups. For example, if you look at the way that water is being rolled out in many cities, there's an emphasis on providing water through water kiosks. But no consideration is given when prices are set as to whether people can afford to buy the minimum quantities they need. How does this play out in practice? This is a group of women, mainly women, few men, in a settlement in Namibia, in a place called Sandy. And these women were very frustrated because the local authority was not addressing their needs for sanitation. They were absolutely committed to providing an option that worked for everyone. So they spent a lot of time, they helped people save money, they actually collected those savings themselves, although the government of Namibia does have resources to help people do infrastructure. And once they had the money that they needed to lay this sewer, this is a sewer in progress kind of thing, it's going to be a sewer line and people will connect their houses. Once they had the finance, they went to local government and they said, please work with us and help us do this. So what you have here is a group of women who were determined that sanitation would not be a few. This is not an option in which a few members of the settlement provide an improved sanitation option. This is going to be an option for everyone. One of the challenges as communities face when they come to develop options is that often the options are not right for them. Let me just explain what I mean. This is a community just outside Harare, a settlement called DZ, and these people, men and women, are working together to build eco-san toilets, eco-sanitation. The reason they have to do this is because there are no sewer lines that they can connect to. When they started to develop this option, the local government explained to them that it was outside of their regulations. So they were not keen on this community doing this. It was only when the community demonstrated how eco-sanitation was a viable option that had addressed sanitation needs in other communities, in this case visiting nearby countries, Malawi primarily, a little bit in other places, then the local authority was won over. So in this case, the local authority is helping finance the infrastructure, but the community are driving the development process. They learnt which designs work for them, and they are providing unskilled labour to ensure that money goes as far as possible. This is another kind of sanitation, and it provides another example of how communities have been thinking through solutions that do not exclude the lowest income groups. So this is a communal block. This is in the town of Jinja in Uganda. This is again a group linked into shack dwellers, the Ugandan Slum Dwellers Federation. And they faced a huge need in this community because there was no sanitation. So again, they built relationships with the local authority. They, in this case, financed it themselves. They're repaying a loan from a fund they have. But actually, in this particular city, the local authority has financed similar blocks, which the community has also been involved in constructing and managing. So the toilets are downstairs, and the room upstairs is a meeting room, which the committee that manages the sanitation rents out to earn a little bit of extra money. Now, this community is conscious that because it's a block, because they have to repay the loan, they charge. And one of the things that they review on a regular basis is that charge fair, or is it excluding members of the community? Thinking through, is it better to have a monthly subscription, which works out much cheaper, or do they let some people pay per use, which is sometimes needed if the sanitation block is close to a market. When communities come together to co-produce these kinds of services, they are very aware that they cannot rely on local government to always prioritise their needs. There are many reasons why government doesn't prioritise their needs. Sometimes they simply run out of money and can't prioritise anyone's needs. Sometimes they have a mayor or an official who understands the significance of community development, who is very prepared to work with communities. Sometimes it shifts a little bit and they have someone who is not interested in informal settlements, sometimes even wants to evict people living in informal settlements, to go back to the negative identities I was talking about 10 minutes ago. So these communities are keen to use co-production, to use the necessary management of basic services at the very local level, not just as a way of addressing people's needs for water, sanitation, waste management, but also as a way of building strong communities. This is another group in Namibia, a small town called Omaruru. And these are women who come together daily basis, sitting and chatting with their kids. They save money, but they also think through what they need. And really it was a meeting I had with these women some years ago that really brought home to me what difference it makes for people, women, to come together and organise around their needs. So I asked one of these women, one of these ladies, why did you join the Shack Dwellers Federation of Namibia? This is the group that they work together to co-produce basic services. And this lady said to me, you know, when I first came here, I didn't know anyone. And Namibia became independent, but I didn't feel I belonged to an independent nation. And she said, now I have a sister in every house on the lane. And some time ago, we needed to address some needs that we had. And we went together and we talked to the governor, as governor of the region. And we talked together with the governor and he received us. And now I feel like a member of an independent country. So this is really what it means for people to come together and be organised. That picture showed what happens at the very local level. This is a group of women in the settlement I showed you before, building eco-sanitation. These women are really trying very hard to work with the city of Harare. They've persuaded the city of Harare to put in place a fund that will finance slum upgrading in this community DZ, but also other communities in the city. So moving from the very small group of women who meet on a very regular basis, maybe every day, this was a much larger meeting these women were having to talk about progress on their development, to talk about what was going on outside of their settlement in the broader city, and to think about where they want to go. The next scale, this is a picture from India, from Mumbai, is where the city, all these women can get together at a city level. This is a picture from a meeting they had with politicians that wanted to represent them, politicians that were seeking their votes. And what these women were trying to do is have a chance to talk to those people about their life experience, about what they were doing for development, but also about their needs and priorities. So finally, the slides I've shown you, the pictures, for me, share what I've learned about how to ensure inclusion, address poverty, challenge the kinds of inequalities that emerge in towns and cities, and think about what does it mean to ensure universal access to basic services. The universal access that was not there in the Millennium Development Goals, but really forms the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think it's evident to me from sharing these experiences that this will carry on being work in progress. This is no easy way to find a solution. For most of these women, and indeed most of what I experience, what I see as an academic professional moving around towns and cities, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, they are many professionally designed solutions that are imposed on grassroots communities. And those solutions, I think, for me, have often been very naive about what is the politics that goes on, what are the ways in which communities have been adversely treated and adversely affected. And as I've begun to work with these women's-led federations, I've understood some of the reasons why they want to get involved, why they are prepared to spend their time digging trenches, arguing with mayors, saving money to improve the water points. And I think for me, what I've learned as a professional is really that it's important to recognise their preferences, to think through how I can collaborate with the particular knowledge and skills that I have had, but to make sure that I don't undermine the kinds of power that can emerge from collective organisations, and think about ways in which I can equip them to lead the process of social transformation and social change. So when I think about these three slides, these three different scales, the very local scale, the settlement scale, the city scale, this is all about these women coming together to begin to create a political platform. That political platform enables them to engage the state from a position of power. It means it's harder for them to be silenced. It means they can find their voice. And they can really use this dialogue with the city, use the process of co-producing basic services, not just to address these very practical gender needs they have, but also address their strategic needs. Also ensure that not that their voice is silenced, but that their voice is heard. They can express their own needs and priorities, and they can talk, they can have an effective dialogue with local government to really think through what is needed to make inclusive cities and really set a progressive agenda for towns and cities in the 21st century. Thank you.